everybody. I was thinking I'd go last or something or whatever. Okay, I get a little nervous, so I have such a long story, I'm trying to see where I should start. But about 19, 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with AIDS. I was working for the city of Baltimore, working 2 jobs when I felt ill, thinking that I had the flu, and to make a long story short, I went to one doctor and they told me I had walking pneumonia. They gave me antibiotics. I went back within 1 to 2 weeks. Nothing, I wasn't any better. And the doctor told me that it was something else maybe going, on with me, but they couldn't figure it out. But the next day, they called me and told me not to come back to the clinic because I didn't have medical coverage and they were in the business of making money. And so I think they knew at the time what was wrong with me. At the time I had wasting and I had begun to lose, a lot of weight. The doctor told me that I was a sick person, that I needed to go to see a doctor to the hospital. So I called the Franklin Square Hospital, which at the time had a program called Ask a Nurse. And I told her that I was a contractual employee with no medical coverage. So they made me an appointment to go to this clinic. And by the time that I went to that appointment, because I missed the first appointment, because as a contractual employee, if I took time off, I didn't get paid. So I went to the second appointment that they made, and by that time, I was in really a bad way. When I walked into the clinic, I was so weak that I had to hold on to the furniture or whatever just to keep my balance. I had a doctor there from Franklin Square and one doctor from St. Joseph's Medical Center that was working at this clinic. They examined me and told me that I did have pneumonia, but they felt that something else was going on. And they asked, could they do an HIV test? And I told them, no, that's not what's wrong with me. I've just been working 2 jobs and overdoing it, and because I felt that it wouldn't happen to me. But I was so sick, I went and told them anyway to go ahead and test me. And within a week, after that appointment, I went home. I was so weak that morning, I got up to go to work, and I collapsed at home. And I called my mother over. My mother came over, and because of the weight loss that I had, she asked me what was going on, and I told her that it was just the flu, pneumonia. But within a few days, the doctors called me and asked me to come to the clinic, as soon as possible. And when I returned, my weight was down to 62 pounds. They told me that both doctors were there, and they told me they had some bad news for me. And they gave me the results of my tests, and they told me that I had full-blown AIDS, and I had about 1 to 2 months to live. I had PCP pneumonia and later developed shingles. And it was a devastating time for me. And the thing that came to mind was not how I was going to live, but what people were going to say. And my mother was sitting out in the waiting room, and how was I going to tell my mother that, I had AIDS? And so with my permission, they had my mother too come in, and the doctors told her that I tested positive and that I had AIDS. My T-cell count was 0, and my viral load was up in the millions. And so they told me that my mother, that she should prepare, that it was just, the one doctor said that I must have had an angel watching over me, because by medical terms, I should have not been sitting in the chair. And that was a terrible time to see my mother, to go through that. And so they said that they were going to, at this clinic, they didn't even have medication to give me. They had to call one of the pharmaceutical companies to bring medication to me. And they said that they were going to refer me to more clinic, and I didn't, want to go, but my mother said I went just to please my mother. And so the doctors dropped my referral papers and all at home because I didn't go back, to pick them, up. And the day that I was told of my diagnosis, my mother dropped me off at home, and I stood in the mirror and I asked God, why me, and what had I done that God had allowed this, to happen to me. And so I prepared to die, and my mother called up my brothers and sisters who live out of state, and they all came, and my mother told one of my uncles, and he came, and they scheduled an appointment for me, as I said, to go to Moore Clinic at Hopkins, and my mother went with me, and they started me on a lot of medication, which AZT, which I really got sick from, and it was just a terrible ordeal, and I knew nothing about PCP pneumonia. My lungs were very infected and on the verge of collapse, and they were, trying to save my life. And I was not put, in the hospital. And so with all the, medication I started taking, and today I'm a peer advocate, and I go throughout the hospital, and like I said, I stand and I help others and let others know there is hope. Okay, sorry.